Hi, this is Steve Schmidt. I am the CEO and founder of Magnetic. This is the new Magnetic podcast. We don't even give the show a name yet. We're going to get through a season because we don't know what to name a show, and we're kind of not trying to be snobs, but we just don't know. We talk about content. We talk about content with sales leaders, revenue leaders, content leaders, CEOs across all industries. So we always make it very clear that although we love software, there is a world that exists well beyond that, and actually software is a very small slab of the overall scheme. We don't have but one software client right now at Magnetic. Most of them are services and IT, security. People have maybe been established for a while, or like Matt Kanaskie is with a firm that's really trying to further establish yourself and pick a leader like Matt to help bring them up market. So with that, Matt Kanaskie, ladies and gentlemen, coming to us from just near the waters of Lake Minnetonka, as you might recall from the famous movie Purple Rain by Prince. Matt Kanaskie, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic, Steve. Good afternoon. And I did a little bathing earlier today, so I'm cleaned off and I got, cleaned up for this. But I was showering in the waters earlier.
The waters are just beyond Matt's trees in the backyard. As we shared with him, there's only 3 or 4 states in the entire country that have that much green foliage. That is in that looks like that. Minnesota is one of them. Matt, you have really spent a lot of your career in the Minnesota region. You've also spent some time in Florida, but I'm going to let you bring everybody through. What are you all about? Tell us your story. Like, why would people want to listen to this, the next 42 minutes of this podcast? I say no pressure, but if we see watch time stop after 2 minutes and 30 seconds, it's on you, not us.
Yeah. Well, I've got one of those very classic sales stories where I started off at the bottom and now I'm at the top. So I joined in a very traditional fashion. Back then, we were called telemarketers. We didn't have cool names like sales development reps or business development reps. We were telemarketers. And so I started my sales career as a telemarketer and earned that next role as a field sales rep, and then actually evolved into the technical side, became a sales engineer, and then moved into sales leadership and have been in sales leadership over a decade now. I've been doing this technology sales for nearly 20 years in all sorts of different capacities. So whether it's product management, sales engineering, direct sales, sales leadership, kind of done it all and seen it all. So here I am today as VP of Sales and Marketing for CyberAdvisors.
That is a lot. That is a lot in a small amount of time. You were not kidding when you said you'd be brief. So I'm actually going to unpeel that a little bit, Matt. You were officially the quickest version of that. So you're not kidding when you said you'd be on a few of these in the last 20 years. You're at CyberAdvisors now. You just came from a regional, large, small little $350 million IT and print services provider, Marco. They're out of St. Cloud, Minnesota. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Okay. Yeah, I spent 8 years there. Yeah.
One of those years painfully tolerated my existence and my ego. That is where I got to know Matt. I've joked about it in a few posts where I'm like, I was an absolute rabid ego jerkhead the first year. Maybe it's a little bit of over-exaggeration, but by all means would have no qualm about emailing Matt, although I hadn't met him yet, and said, hey, Matt, this is Steve. I can tell you why we need LinkedIn Sales Navigator and Salesforce and content. And he's like, whoa. Cool, but hey, by the way, my name is Matt Kanaskie. And so that's how we got to know each other there. And I put up some pretty respectable revenue numbers there, not so much for, call it just my prospecting efforts. Marco was becoming sort of this regional force, but not by advertising, right? It was a lot of, call it, relationships in the field, and that's tech to many people. But I want you to start off by answering that question I would have, which is, isn't tech traditionally more relationship, face-to-face, golf tournaments, scotch tastings? These are the things I see on LinkedIn, right? A lot of booze, guns, and golf courses. Is that maybe far off from that?
You nailed my last 2 events. It was booze tasting and a golf event. Yeah, spot on.
But it works,
a lot of it's
right?
very, very relationship focused. A lot of referral and networking through the customer base, and a lot of just feet on the street and local presence is still very prevalent in that go-to-market strategy.
So,
and you weren't a pain. Hold on, I got to clarify. You weren't a pain to me. You were an intriguing phone call that caught my interest, and I said, we need to try something different. I'm going to listen. I'm going to try it. And if you remember, I authorized all the POCs and all the demos for you. So that was great, and you opened my eyes and opened my world to a whole new way of digital transformation of sales is what I've coined it since then.
Well, yeah, and that was a joke. Matt was actually very receptive. So sorry, I was trying to make it like a joke. Matt was very receptive. He said, here's what I'd like to see with these. Why don't you do a small POC and then get some results and then come back and we can build a case? And so I was like, wait a second, you want me to justify this purchase? All that was new to me, having to do that, but really did go on to dial up some of that tech in the background sort of independently, right? While the joke that I tell people that maybe they don't know it's a joke either is, no, I did not hack into the network of Marco. What I meant was everybody else left. I got on my wireless network because a lot of the sites I was using, a good firm like Marco was locking down their network. So they're not going to let me randomly crawl on sites. And that's part of the advantage of having that. But I wasn't going to leave the office because I would be unfocused. And so funny enough, here I am 5 later, haven't touched an office, very focused, but it provided me the environment to sit there because I wasn't drinking at happy hours anymore. I had time on my hands and all the happy hours in my past account for everybody in the room that I could now sit for 2-3 hours at a time. Matt, what I found out was, and tell me if this is shocking or not, I found it to be a warm reception. People weren't getting a lot of calls like this or emails that were informative. I wasn't getting a lot of take me off your list. Maybe it was the South Dakota in that and the maybe the technology we were selling, but I didn't get the same pushback I was getting when I use these tools at other companies in more crowded markets. Talk to me about that, because you had a lot of smaller regions that you were overseeing, right? Was content maybe foreign to them and really it was relied on these methods like the events, or is that something that you and your team, well, at Marco, did a lot of experimentation, a lot of, call it, budget throwing at?
Yeah, I think timing had a lot to do with it as well. There was a time that, geez, Steve, that was probably, 7 years ago or so now, right?
Yep.
And these, having intent data and having awareness was kind of new to sellers, right? So, leveraging that in content and leveraging that in messaging was the part that I think was well received and refreshing. Now, there was probably a bit of coincidence of locality and niceness of people. However, I think realistically, it was just, it was actually new, right? And now we have to look at that differently 5 years later, where everybody's kind of caught on to where now they're bombarded, right? Those refreshing messages with good outcomes and value propositions and directly pointed at their problems. A lot of people have access to that same information now too and have actually adopted it. So now I have 6 people telling me my problems a day instead of 1. And it's no longer that intriguing. It's very interesting to me, too, in my role, because I get solicited, right? I love saying solicited because it feels like a weird word, but, that's what we do.
Feels very naughty, doesn't it?
Yeah, right? But, I get contacted constantly. I get outreach, cold outreach and messages all day long as a sales leader. So I get to assess in reverse, messages that work or don't work or catch my attention or I breeze over. And I'm also one of the worst, too, because I know all the statistics and everything that's going on behind the scenes, so I like to mess with them to create better open rates and better view rates and longer engagement rates, even though, I just open the email and let it sit on a screen for a while.
Well, I'm going to challenge you to answer this question, too. As a leader of sellers, how many of those emails do you respond to and you never hear from anybody? You might say, hey, pop me some more information, or hey, tell me how this stacks up against a competitor, and you hear nothing.
It's pretty rare. They're usually pretty good at the follow-up for the most part. Sometimes the timing's a little questionable, just like everything, right? On an inbound lead, you want to hit right away. Sometimes you wonder, was there anyone behind this? Because it's been 2 days. Or even more fun when it's a different name responding from the name that sold it to you, and so you can tell there's a disconnect in their sales enablement process.
Yes, that was a cold handoff where all of a sudden someone said, "Oh, sign of life." He opened the email, and we give it to email handler too. They're now qualified to respond because nobody in tier 4 that we pay 6 cents an hour for. And I look at those large scale operations too, and that's its own thing to manage. It's its own robust, call it, content system, where you go to Marco now, you got regional sellers, right? So walk me through this. You got 150 to 200 people selling for you, right? You've got a sales and marketing team.
Yes.
You've got an inbound team. So, maybe not inbound, but someone calls in, 1-800, someone submits a web lead. You had a team for that, correct?
Yep. There was a triage team that really fed it right back to outbound.
Got it. Then you had a bunch of partners and affiliates who all wanted you to sell their stuff, right?
Correct.
So
and one more. We had our own partners as well that were indirectly generating revenue.
A lot of revenue channels. So walk everybody through that who maybe hasn't seen from that purview of, I don't just have a direct sales team. I know you guys want to think you're the only people in the world, but I have these other revenue levers. Walk everybody through that and maybe in a day in the life of that. And then obviously you're carrying some of that forward to sort of put into a smaller organization now, but I think it really helps paint context about your daily work of how you need to view the business.
I love partner channels. Love them. They're a great indirect revenue source. So right from the top, I always separate direct revenue streams and indirect revenue streams, right? And direct, generally speaking, are going to be on my payroll, on my team as an employee, taking motions for our brand every single day. That is their main charter in their sales journey. Indirect partners may represent a myriad of different solutions. They're non-exclusive. They can sell anything they want. And so there's a different engagement there that you kind of have to draw the partner as your client. Subsequently, the partner then gets you clients, end user clients, right? So there's a different motion in attracting and retaining and pleasing partners than it is direct sellers. The outcome ultimately is the same as getting to the end user client through both of those channels and serving them with whatever you have. So with that, you actually have to have different sales motions, different messaging, different value proposition to each one of those sides, and they do compete with each other. So you have to manage conflict internally and rules of engagement and who gets first right of refusal, who gets to register the deal in their name, who was there first, who has better notes. All of those things.
What are the deal registration
really
parameters,
important.
Right? Did you really know the person or did you? Okay, got it.
Are you quoting the exact same thing? Is it like for like solution, pricing deviations, all of that? It's a lot to manage when multiple people are in an opportunity, and you can have scenarios where you have multiple partners and direct in an opportunity. So you're managing 3 or 4 selling entities to the same client. There's certainly a lot of logistics in managing those different streams. And I say indirect partner as if it's one thing, but then there's different types of indirect partners. There's brokers and resellers and wholesalers and cooperative buying programs and various different levels of partnerships as well that are all structured differently contractually.
Content. You had a marketing team. You had a call it a demand generation function. Like they could go create demand with marketing assets. Mm-hmm. But you have all these partners. Did you then rely on your partners? So let's call it a big one, like a Cisco. Did you then say, hey, if we want to message and sell Cisco, Cisco's going to give us their content and then we're going to bake it into our content? Or did they say, hey, this is exactly what you're going to tell them because we're Cisco and we're going to give you the marketing dollars and you're going to not say anything outside of these exact same thing?
No, they were certainly flexible. They would give you an outline and a structure. We would mutually agree on the message or the target or the product that we wanted to drive some revenue behind. And we could select, they've got a large portfolio. They offer all kinds of different solutions. So first of all, we had to not boil the ocean and go, let's just talk about these 3 things, right? And in those 3 things, let's get our sequence of messaging from completely unaware to interested to fully engaged and wanting to purchase, right? And driving through that motion. Then they, generally speaking, had some, we'll call it boilerplate content. It's there, it's functional, it's in a rough outline format. You could just slap a logo on it and send it if you want. But that is highly impersonal and doesn't really connect with your brand. You're just furthering the Cisco brand, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. So it would function just well if you wanted them to go buy from Cisco online. But the connection to your brand is where you could, personalize those messages and weave in your service offerings, weave in your value, weave in your design expertise to really customize that content, whether it was a marketing flyer, whether it was email campaign templates, whether they were call scripts. We would basically take those and modify 30% of it to customize it to what we did differently than another Cisco partner that I knew had the same exact content. I mean, they're getting the same playbook. Right, so
it's in the partner channel portal, depending on if you're silver, gold, or premium, right?
And you can tell who a lazy partner is right away because if you look at the collateral and you see a direct copy and paste, you pretty much know they didn't put any effort into it. They stamped a logo on it and started mailing it out.
Yeah, and that's not what we call a competitive differentiator, although having the relationship has been sort of the competitive differentiator, right? So maybe I get a little lazy. Maybe I say, it doesn't matter. These guys are going to buy Cisco for me no matter what because I'm the best Cisco architect in the tri-state region. Or would you say that, and this is maybe the comparison I should draw, technology and validation matters. Nobody's going to buy anything for a tech environment that sounds cool and new and AI driven, right? You guys are not selling the latest and greatest non-compliant thing. 100% of what you were pitching was around security and compliance, right? So there was not a lot of early adopters in your field, right? It was a lot of these bigger legacy players. Or walk me through that. Was there some more? Actually, I recall Perch, security player, I believe, since acquired, right? They were a nimble player who was really good at content.
Yes. They're part of ConnectWise now and a current partner of mine in our ecosystem as well.
Cool. Life works out well for them.
Yeah, it was, I'll put it in a couple different perspectives, right? There was the utilization of AI and enablement tools to further the initiative of generating pipeline and opportunities. That's kind of one section of SaaS tools and adoption that were relatively new to our space. As this is a very fundamental door-knocking, business card grabbing, cold calling type of sales culture, and has been that way for a while. Then there's the products and services themselves from the manufacturers that are integrating and adopting machine learning and AI into enhancing the way that those tools are delivered, provisioned, managed, the way that they modify their behaviors based on what they're seeing happening in networks. That is kind of connecting with the buzz and tying it to those, legacy products, but also showing evolution on adoption of those tools and making traditional things like networking better, right? More automated, more intelligent. So they do start to weave that into the marketing message and grab on some of that, that buzz, if you will, right? This is an AI provisioned router. That's really all you need to say in a marketing doc. Nobody really knows much more than beyond that. And if you dig deeper, it's probably very similar to many of the other AI tools out there. It's pretty good, but it is not done. It's not 100%. It'll just get you 80% of the way automated, and you just fill in the last 20%. Still remarkably more efficient.
So I guess what I'm really hearing is if I want to find out about technology and I can go get updated on the channels that Cisco, HP, F5, these bigger players are doing. As a reseller, your job is to then take that message, call it, personalize it to your portfolio. Say, here's what we represent, here's who we resell, and this is why. So there has to be some thought behind that, right? We're a cybersecurity firm, so we're not your telecom and POTS provider, right? But it's still partner driven, and partners need to somehow educate people. So when you call them and they don't go, Matt, who are you talking about? I've never heard of this provider before. It's probably harder to get them to want to come to a whiskey tasting or bourbon tasting event than, oh, hey, Cisco's coming to town, versus this new player who might have some budget and you go, hey, I want you to come and look at this content. You've never heard of them before. They're a niche player in mobile device management. Can you just do me a favor and show up? Like, it's one of those things where I think that the content itself almost needs to be found out about and independently researched, where they can do that work on their own. Your job is to facilitate the relationship and say, this is or isn't something you should consider. And that's part of my job, is to keep the vendors away from you.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. And then tying the knowing what customer segment the solution was intended for and designed for, you're not always going to get that very cleanly out of the manufacturer's marketing message, because they don't want to isolate anyone. They don't want to say, this isn't for you, it's for them. It's for everybody, right? And then the reseller or partner is going to come in and say, hey, that's overkill for your environment, or that's not going to integrate with anything you have, or, looks nice, glad you attended that webinar. Here's 4 reasons why you can't implement that on your current stack, things like that. So they're expecting us to, one, have the tribal knowledge of them, knowing who they are, what they have, and what works in their environment, and 2, going out and becoming knowledgeable on those solutions, kind of curating what fits for them and what is right-sized for them, right-sized budget, right? We do a lot of expense management, budget planning, road mapping, inventory management, those type of functions are financial motions, right? And we're trying to help with budgeting and help with lifecycle management when things become beyond usable and become a risk instead of an asset. To truly do that, you got to know, like, when this thing comes out, man, that looks really cool. It's like the minimum entry point's $1 million. Like, you're not buying that storage platform. Like, that's not meant for you. It's really cool. It really is. But it's not, you've got like 26 users. You're not going to buy that thing. Yeah. Right? It's really helping interpret, right? Because they're full of acronyms.
We're just talking about extreme. I feel like you're just talking about extreme networks, by the way. I was like, wait a second, $100,000, forward thinking. Like, that was definitely like the extreme networks flavor 5 years ago, right?
Like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them, but like these enterprise storage platforms, I'll leave them nameless. I don't want to call anybody out, but
sure,
some of them, small medium business in general are not investing heavily in a bunch of hard drives for storage anymore, right? And so they're made for a different market segment, and we're expected to essentially know who does this fit for, then go curate me based on your relationships, people that fit that, and help us connect to it. And that's really the purpose of those events or webinars, things that we're doing, is we're trying to just connect to the clientele that fit the reason why the solution was designed in the first place.
Help make this sense, because this is the part I love about it. I love the channel too. We use the channel at Magnetic. I use the channel at T-Mobile. I use the channel at Mark. I'm very accustomed to it. A lot of people in SaaS go, what do you mean? The channel. Because today, and I've asked a lot of people this, and we're starting to get answers, is there's no SaaS brokers. There's nobody who says, hey, do you want Gong, Outreach, SalesLoft, this, that? Like, they're there, but they're calling themselves different things, right? They're coming out as consultants, and they have an affiliate link. And if you go to my About Me section on LinkedIn, you can also go click it and maybe get a deal or not. And either way, I get credit, and a little bit of shavings make a pile. Like, it's a different game. Versus the, hey, I'm so-and-so, people only buy SaaS from me. Like, that doesn't happen. So walk people through that model, because I think they'll appreciate what you're saying if you say, okay, here's how technology is typically sold when purchased through my sales team. Walk me through that. Walk the listeners through that, please, Matt, so they really understand.
Yeah, just a comment on the SaaS thing, right? It's built on e-com, right? On e-commerce as the driver, so it makes sense, the affiliate model, that, if they're already going and swiping and you're just going to skim on that transaction, you didn't need to hold their hand to get them to execute the cart, right? Yep. And buy. Quite frankly, does not happen at scale with IT solutions. They don't put all these things in a cart and click buy. They look for a trusted advisor. They look for a partner. They look for literally someone they can trust and go, am I buying the right things? Is this going to do what I think it's going to do? Is it going to give me the business outcome I want? Are you here to back it up? So if you told me it does all this, I'm going to hold you accountable 6 months from now, and it better deliver that outcome, right? Because I trust you. That's why I buy my stuff from you. If you make good on that promise and you deliver that, they're going to buy again, right? That's where that relationship and trust comes from. You become their technology guy or gal. You're it. You're the call they're making to go, I want to do this thing for my business. I went to this webinar. I went to this conference. I saw this commercial. I saw this video. What does that mean to our business? How would we do that? You ideally want to be positioned that they're calling you and asking, hey, Matt, tech guy, how do we do this? How do we get there? You know what we got. You know where we want to go. Construct the solution that gets me there.
What happens in 5 years when I can send an AI scan to you and go, no, I don't need you. I don't need someone to tell me. They can accept this. It scans their network, and I now know within 2 minutes on a chat bot what your network looks like, what we can sell to you, and whether or not, okay, you're nodding your head. So it's already here. Is it already here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could totally see that discovery portion being automated, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, they're looking for accountability, right? We're covering sensitive data. We're covering people's personally identifiable information. We're protecting assets or intellectual trade secrets or something like that makes their business unique. If you design and buy it yourself and implement it yourself, then who's responsible? You and AI, not me. So you have to think about that too, that there's, sometimes you just want to use someone else that's an expert in it that you can hold accountable. The fit hits the shan, as I like to say. Then you know where you're going, right? You're calling somebody. You're not just getting lost in a queue and A lot of what I've seen and found and personally experienced is very easy to procure, very hard to unravel that relationship later. You're stuck in this perpetual vortex of nothingness that no one wants to actually talk to you or solve your problem, or trying to get back to a live call when you have a complicated situation becomes very difficult beyond that initial super easy, smooth transaction to onboard.
Oh, we could go down this rabbit hole. So let's go there. So SaaS is built for an 88 to 96% profit margin, right? So they almost don't care, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. You're like, this is the other thing that I learned. And by the way, I asked on my third day to Dan Flepson, who was my manager, I said, Dan, what the fuck is margin? And I literally don't, I mean, that's what I think about pretty much, 2 to 3 hours a day now. And he was like, explain it to me. I'm like, so wait, it's not this, but it's that. So either way is the margins are different because when you're selling a piece of hardware, especially you're now reselling the hardware. So you're essentially buying the hardware, adding your points on top of it, saying, we're going to pay you for it, but we're going to take our best deal because we got it deal registered because we found the deal. Yep. I'm now going to put my price knowing I'm going to get it for less. It's still well positioned, so we're not making too much profit that we feel like we're gouging them. And then I'm going to wrap my services around it. And really 5 years ago, we saw a land grab for managed services, managed IT in particular. Walk us through the evolution of, call it managed IT 5 years ago, starting to be a commoditized market where you are today, which is called you're selling security solutions, assumingly very far from commoditized. What does that look like managing 5 years ago versus where you're at now? What are the differences in those two, call it managed markets for your IT selling teams?
Yeah, the earlier scenario, we'll start at the beginning, largely predicated on education and comparison of staffing, right? You were trying to draw a comparison to, you can do this yourself for this cost, or you could outsource it for this cost. And if you outsource for this cost, you get this much more knowledge. You get an expansive knowledge base compared to a singular human. And we were selling things like, no sick days, no vacation, 24/7 availability, a myriad of resources. You don't just get one, you get 10, and they're going to help with your network. And so a lot of it was, people versus people selling, right? You basically already have this embedded cost. You're paying for a person or people to do this. Here's an alternative way to pay for people to do the same or similar tasks. The old hiring and firing scenario, right? You don't have to deal with hiring or firing, not your challenge. And progressively, hiring got harder. And the cost of these resources went up, so it became more difficult to attract talent to small, medium-sized business. Why would the most brilliant IT person go work there? Mm-hmm. There's no upside opportunity in their career to be chained to a small, medium-sized business with one singular infrastructure. They have a far greater opportunity working for a technology superstore that has all the toys to play with and advance their career.
Yep.
So you're eventually going to lose your talent to them anyways. It's a better place for these people to spend their time. That kind of was the goal. And then, now, I don't want to say mass adoption, but mass adoption for the target. And I want to clarify that managed IT is not for everybody. So mass adoption doesn't mean every company has outsourced IT. Mm-hmm. It means the percentage of companies that we believed would outsource IT have. We've gotten much closer to that target. And so now we're selling different value propositions. Now you're in your second renewal. So you're educated on how the consumption works. You're knowledgeable on how different pricing models work. You've experienced 1, 2, maybe 3 different companies in the way that they offer this service. You're an educated buyer now. So you're going, I know what I want for my service level agreements. I know what I want for my tool set stack. I know what I want for my technicians on-site or remote only or both. So that's kind of like the table stakes, the managed IT portion. Yeah. The strategy part now moves into managed security. Great. We've got your network running. We've got your users happy. Everything works every day. Now how are we protecting it? Now how are we monitoring and alerting? Now how are we defending against things that you're not ready for? And we get into the strategy of planning and putting incident response plans in place and business continuity and disaster recovery, and not just saying them as acronyms and buzzwords. Like, let's write a plan and hold each other accountable to it.
Yeah.
So that's where the value differentiation is now. It's all just blurred together with managed services, right? So there's a lot of differentiation that has to happen within that conversation.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of people who work for startups on LinkedIn, right? It's just kind of the nature of the beast. And they sort of access Google Drive and they're like, well, what do you mean file server? Like, aren't we using the cloud? Why would we need you? And you'd say, okay, cool. Who built and who hosts your SaaS platform? Okay, great. You're probably using Amazon, right? Who's your disaster recovery backup? Do you have an always-on redundant platform? Those are people selling you cloud storage, cloud computing, right? And so really that IT model is what powers SaaS, right? So a lot of people are putting SaaS before it, yet it needs to traverse now fiber networks and cellular networks to now be able to access the hardware and even have a network.
Yeah, they're different. We have more and more, that's a good point, from old managed IT to new managed IT, right? We have a lot more born in the cloud, all SaaS. We just use a bunch of apps. I don't have infrastructure, right? It's typically what we get. I don't have servers. I don't have infrastructure. I don't have an office. Yeah. I don't even provide devices to my users, right? But everybody has data.
Yes.
And everybody makes money. And all the bad guys want is money and data. So it doesn't actually matter what kind of infrastructure you have. You're still susceptible to the same risk. You still have the same challenges of privacy and protection and governance controls and preventing someone from accessing that, right? And another, just since we're on the topic, I'll do a couple cybersecurity plugs, right? Just for a mental check.
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Oftentimes I get, hey, we don't really have data that anyone would want. I can't imagine they would target my data. There's nothing special in there. And it's like, yeah, but you have money. You make profit. So if I just hold your data from you and just get money for it in exchange, that's all I want.
You want to hear a nightmare story about this in real life, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay, 2023 has been pretty interesting. 2022 was nobody knew this at the time outside of two people. Flew to New York, preparing to sell the company. Flew back, got back, and I said, this is strange, because we were going to go back to the office and recoup. I said, guys, we're getting this report that all of our Zoom info credits are gone. And we have like 103,000 of them in the bank because we were a big lead gen partner. And I'm like, no way. This is a 6-figure contract. Like, this was a big one, right? And sure enough, called in. They said, nope, actually, no. Look, they were all used yesterday. Yep, we used 98,764. Long story short is, yes, somebody came in there. Yes, they downloaded them. Yes, they got through there on somewhere we didn't know, because our managed IT provider, which we did use one, forgot to turn 2FA on. And our person who managed the managed IT provider never checked to make sure they had it on. So everybody was going, and I'm going, cool, who's going to pay for it? And they said, not us. Because we sold it to you, we didn't have to turn it on. That is your job. And I kind of went, wait a second. There's like these lines of demarcation point where even if I'm not equipped to have any technical resource on, I still probably need one, because if I don't understand it, you guys need somebody in the business to still work for, or at least be that technical person. You can't do it all and make sure we turn on all the things just because you sold it to us, is really what I'm getting at. It was a horror story. It all ended okay, by the way. Nobody lost money in the end. It was an exercise of learning communication.
Ultimately, there's all kinds of different ways that could have been handled probably better, right? And we have an obligation as managed service providers to the point of being obnoxious with our customers, of reminding them what needs to be implemented, updated, replaced, repaired. I say to the point of ad nauseum, because I have customers that have actually gotten upset with me for constantly reminding them that they need to buy something, right? Because ultimately it sounds like a sales pitch. Yep. We're stuck in this weird spot where it sounds like I'm trying to sell you something. Seriously, you got to upgrade that server. Seriously, we need to upgrade that server. All right, Matt, stop trying to sell me a new server. And it's like, well, I'm just trying to get past your operating system's end of life. Microsoft Windows OS 2012, October 10th. Done.
Can I tell you the reason why it happened? Because you're going to love it, because you were the right reason. You would have laughed at us if we were the customer. Because we didn't want to buy 2 more licenses. We shared passwords apparently within the organization on non-secure networks, therefore making it very easy to get in and just sit there and wait until you get what you want. Hit download in the middle of the night, 3:21 a.m. happens, boom, done. And so it was like, boom, it was just like that. And I'm assuming it's something as simple as that is like, we used to call that phishing. Now employees are giving it away voluntarily, especially in a hyper SaaS seed environment where the company goes, hey, don't buy another one. Just use Matt's password. That's not good to do, right? And there's a lot more reasons than saving a few bucks why you shouldn't do that.
Well, it makes multi-factor authentication more difficult because you're trying to bypass a lot of the things we're trying to put in place to verify you are you.
Yes.
So if you want to take away that function, then anyone could be you. Not only your coworker, but anyone.
Yeah, that's scary. And then I don't even want to talk about the idea of like a one password. I'm like, okay, cool. I got all my passwords in this one place now. I'm like, hey guys, like I never checked on this company. They seem legit, like and kind of big, but who is protecting their data? Because if we've all now put it into one place, it seems to me like that would be a good place to target.
Yeah, you just described LastPass. They got breached. So
okay,
it has happened. 1Password's a good product, by the way.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of everybody's a target, but something that I struggle with. This might be a fun little end to our talk here. I'm really struggling as a professional seller to be seen as an advocate, as someone trying to genuinely help companies and actually protect them, but I'm labeled as a salesperson. And so it always comes off as a sales pitch, and I know I'm walking right into some content that can help me overcome this, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because I know there's a reason we're talking here.
That's right. Yep.
I believe that is my path to success, is that we have to generate content that shows us as experts, that shows us as empathetic, that shows us as helpers, show the successes and the failures, the stories that we've had, to hopefully connect with someone else saying, I want to get better, right? I don't want to live this way anymore. I want to get better. Yeah. And so they're going to engage with that message, and then that's how they're going to say, I am ready to go on this cybersecurity journey. I am ready to protect my business. I'm ready to take advice and implement, understanding that along the way, I'm going to sell you a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like, I have to sell you products to get to these outcomes to better protect yourself. Mm-hmm. And it is really something that, 20 years selling, that in this last year I've really struggled with. Like, I've gotten very frustrated. Yeah. I've gotten very sad about it. I've left meetings walking out feeling legitimately sad for the employees that work there, going, wow, they're like, their whole their livelihood's at risk. They don't understand that their payroll is at risk. Like, they may not get a check this Friday.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's going on at MGM right now. Like, they may not make payroll.
MGM Lakers? Or MGM the hotel?
No, MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Geez. Some of these scenarios, right, it's hard. You walk in, God, I feel bad for them. I feel sorry for them, and they're just completely unaware. And I just left an executive meeting where they're going, we're not going to invest in any of this, and we don't think it's a risk, and that's not going to apply to us, and they're not after us. I'm going, oh, man.
Yeah.
Man, this is scary. So I'm searching for a way to connect there without the traditional sales pitch.
Well, I think the one thing that happens in every industry is all of our customers would rather find out the preliminary information on their own. We seem to have accepted that they would rather find out on their own, unless, right, you're the good salesman who calls and says, I know you didn't know about this, but I'm calling to tell you why it's broken, why it matters that it's broken, how you're going to fix it, what will happen if you don't fix it. Like, those are sophisticated sellers. And content itself doesn't have to have a person telling me. It's like one control mechanism a company can have. So if I can scale content, even, now am I raising awareness? Am I trying to educate? The easiest thing I've seen work really well is like you give people the things they think they know in IT, and then they go, I don't want to do this myself, but thank you for explaining it to me, Matt. Can I hire your team to do it? Because that looks like too much work. And like you're going to show them how to do it themselves, hedge the bets that they're not going to, and especially in services, just like with us with content, go, every day, Matt, I share the secrets on how to do what I do because I just likely figured it out a month ago or 6 months ago. And I tell people, and nobody's copying it yet. Very few people are, right? So it's all out there, but you still have to execute on it, right? So that's the biggest thing I'm thinking is how do you get content out there and get people to execute it in a way that gets them to, as marketing would call it, raise their hand, right? Especially in the engineering and technical world. They don't want to talk to marketing. They're like, just get me to the smart person. That's why I don't click on these things.
A lot of times I think timeline is not taken serious enough. So it's not necessarily that you're incapable of doing it. It's not a challenge. It's not an intellectual battle. It's just we could have it done next week, and then you don't have to worry about that component hanging out anymore.
Yeah.
So, time is of the essence here. And so you can tackle the project, but if it takes your team 4 months to implement it, well, that's 4 months of vulnerability sitting there hoping something doesn't happen, right? Versus closing that door and locking it right now. So sometimes they're not properly measuring risk and opportunity cost and time and those things. But hey, everybody's got their own approach to it, and we're just here to help.
You have a to your point. So where I see this and sort of how I would talk about with every guest is like, I know your industry pretty well, not nearly as well as you because I don't work in it anymore and have not had the 25 career. But telecom, I think it's always going to be wireless is wireless. They're fighting for land share. They're saying there's 4 of us. Who's going to make the most? And then it becomes marketing dollars and network, right? That's pretty much it. I look at hardware sort of like it used to be IBM. Nobody really knows who buys Oracle, but apparently a lot of people do because they have arenas and they own cities and kingdoms. But like that's a big piece of legacy enterprise tech. And so a lot of people go, well, who's that? Because Oracle. But yet now a lot of those places, especially Oracle 5 years ago, 10 years ago, started winning in the SMB, started winning in the mid-market. And those people in particular don't get the same invites to the steak dinners, don't traditionally get the same invites. And I'd say what they're still learning about it somehow. So I feel like content in the tech world is how can we give people things that they can consume and only raise their hand because they consumed this. And they value the fact that we brought it to them enough to say, help me dissect this and understand how it might make sense or not. Because I don't see, as I look out there, a lot of forward-thinking salespeople. You have a guy who used to work with, Jared Schock. Jared Schock would put on his own webinars, his own lunch and learns, and ask other sales reps if they want to jump on because he had that much of a demand as a consultant. He used to work at Cisco. He used to be like kind of a nerd. And so like his nerdiness wins him the deals. It's why he can sell $10 to $15 million a year as a sales rep because he's hired a team to support him. That's how I look at Jared is like, I took a big lesson from that guy. He's going, I don't need my own brand. I've got Cisco here, this person here, this person here. I'm a connector of that brand to the people who can consume it. I now need to connect them. So what if it was content? His content was a live webinar, a live dinner. I'm still looking at pretty pictures, listening to people talk, and either getting buy-in or buy not. They still have a call to action at the end, right? They go, Matt, don't forget, come look at us at the back door before you leave. And they'll kind of skirt out the back and try and find one way to get out of there while still getting a steak and not having to talk to the sales guy. But you get one or two of them to buy. You go, cool, good ROI. We just sold $80,000 worth of gear for a $2,000 dinner. Like, is that really the piece that I and that's where I think it still has to live there, because if you just went to the internet and YouTube.
It is.
Yeah.
I want to flip it on its head a little bit, right? And it's got me thinking, right? So the challenge with the webinars, yes, there's some draw, there's some giveaway, there's a measured bet that if I invest this much, I should be able to get it. If I could just get one meaningful opportunity and closure with a customer, we got it covered. It was worth it, right? And that is hard to come by, and I believe customers all understand that. They know what's going on at these events, right? And that's what comes with sponsoring and providing all of this stuff. It's still a great time. I mean, everybody, generally speaking, has a great time. They're worth coming to. But I think, where we've done a poor job, myself personally, my sales orgs, my marketing teams in our industry, is we always build it as like, we have this great content. We're going to gate it, we're going to hide it behind a webinar, and we're going to drive attendance to that webinar, and you've got this instance and time to collect it, and if you attended, we'll share it with you later. Instead of kind of flipping it around and going, we're just going to do a public series of videos with the same content we were going to share anyways, and put them out there on YouTube and let people come to them as they please, whenever they do, whatever works for them, whenever it's convenient for them, and then engage thereafter.
But I can't corner him in the back then. I can't corner him in the back of the room.
Yes, I can't put my finger on tracking exactly where it came from and what campaign or whatever. Yeah. Definitely a lot harder to get sponsorship money from the vendors to cover those kind of ideas. This is where I have to sell a little bit and get them to come with me on this journey and let's try some new things. But I could also say that a lot of them are very receptive to that because it's stale. We're all doing the same thing. They have thousands of partners doing the same webinars, the same events, the same golfing things, the same Top Golf, the same. They work, they're fun, they're good for people, don't get me wrong. They're open for what else could we do with this money, these funds that we have, and how could we do something a little different? And so that's something that I'm going to challenge myself to embark on that journey with my team and start seeing if we could just position ourselves as a knowledge center and draw people in.
Yep.
Because it's also exhausting, inviting people to webinars, and then you have one every month, and it's like, all right, Steve, I know I emailed you last week, and I asked you to come to this one, but if you could just come to this one again, I'll give you $50. It'll be great.
I'm doing a phone blitz. They made me do this.
Yeah, and please, stay logged in for 32 minutes, okay? So it shows that we had full attendance.
Well, it's they call it dark social, meaning if we lose control, and by the way, we already have, right? We can't track their domains a lot of places. Every wireless person pretty much can block and filter out any call that might be potentially spam. We've lost control, and we're in a bad economy for a lot of industries. And so people are as my kids would say, they're spinning out hard. They're, what are the other words? I don't want to get into kid vocab, but I feel like I just had the opportunity to drop 3 of them. I'm spinning out, no sus, no cap. But either way, everybody's kind of spinning right now. And I feel like we are still, we figured out, we just launched our own YouTube channel a week and a half ago. And because we're the shoemaker's son, I hired a new chief content officer. His first question day one after we did 90 days of niceties and making it official, he goes, great. What is it that we're hoping to drive with our YouTube? I said, it's a good question. I said, we haven't thought about that strategy yet. We've been thinking about it for our customers, but I'll give you a good example of what we've done with a very non-traditional customer. It's been very webinar-like, but it's different, right? They sell negotiations. They bought our team in and they wanted to do the cold outbound, the cold emails. They kind of banged their heads against the wall for 6 months and it's not working. And then I said, well, if you brought us in, I think why it's not working is because you're trying to email CROs and VPs of procurement and CROs in Fortune 1000 companies who have really good email security, not a lot of time, and don't care about your product. So I'm not laughing at you. I wrote the emails. I thought they were good too. I'm feeling insulted. But what if we went out to those people as thought leaders? Because there isn't anybody in your space that's actively having podcasts, not with their buddies, but the customers who are out there and the prospects who you don't know today and saying, hey, we got revenue leaders over here in procurement. Can we get one of each on an episode and say, we're going to ask you both some questions? And it gets very nuanced and you're hearing these war stories and pieces of advice. And then we put 25 episodes on YouTube. And then nobody's organically going to find us here. This is nobody types in how do I buy a managed router in Minneapolis, and Matt's new YouTube goes up. He's like, hey, I just made this last night. You found me. You need a lot of views. You're playing with a different game, right? You can either pay to get better views, pay for better ads, or organically try to make it. If you can perform organically and have non-paid content, that is what YouTube calls the hardest thing to do. I'm going to use the right keywords. I'm going to not use the first or second thing they might say, but the third, right? So instead of negotiations, we said enterprise negotiations. Well, nobody on the street is talking about enterprise sales negotiations or enterprise negotiations for procurement. And then we were able to start taking traffic from LinkedIn, putting micro videos saying to see the full episode, go to YouTube. Great. That's how we get the YouTube people, because we do not care if they aren't a buyer. We just don't. That's our methodology. Magnetic means positive or negative. You attract the people that are for you, get rid of everybody else because they don't matter. They'll come back if they do matter. There's 10% of everybody who might be your buyer. Focus on the ones that like you, think like you, talk like you, go to the same places on vacation like you, aren't afraid to swear if you swear. Why? Because it's easier to do business that way. And they likely won't attrit because they'll go, hey man, even on a bad month, Matt, I still like you. We're a lot alike. And I share your point of view. So I'm not going to leave you on a pricing concession because somebody gave me a better deal. I share your point of view. And I learned about your point of view long before I met you. And that was through content. Content's how I met you, and it's how I bought your stuff. I'm really back to a relationship here because I bought the thing because I learned about Matt Kanaskie through content and I couldn't find him in real life. So here we go, internet, right? So but you're regional, right? So everybody's sort of within driving distance, or you're within the metropolitan, but they still want to get on the internet and learn a few things at night that they probably don't know, as great as your sales team is, that you can even do yet. And that's where I'd say it's really endless. There is no end to how amazing your content journey could be. other than when it stops producing an ROI, probably for a guy like you, right, Matt? So I say have fun with it. And I think you guys have all the room in the world with your background, Matt, to have some fun and not be so overtly serious. Because although your space is serious, people want to have fun because it's so serious all the time. It's a very serious thing, cybersecurity. If it goes wrong, it's not good for anybody.
No, certainly not. No, and we deal with far too many incident response scenarios that sometimes are just head shakers. Sometimes they're very crafty, but a lot of times it's just the basics. That could have prevented.
We're going to wrap up only because I'm running out of time. You're running out of time, and I end up just talking a lot to even put us further in time. The one thing that people are going to care about right now is if you've made it this far, which a lot of you probably have, especially people in the IT space, Matt, where can they find you and reach out to you? Say, hey, Matt, I learned a few things. Let's have a talk.
I'm always on LinkedIn. That's like my spot. Matt Kanaskie at CyberAdvisors. You can find me there. Kanaskie at cyberadvisors.com. You can email me straight up. I do have my contact out there on LinkedIn as well. No shame to just hit me up directly. Happy to talk.
One of the nicest guys in that game, and maybe nice is the wrong word because he doesn't look very nice, but he's a very nice person. He's very well spoken. I think very highly of Matt Kanaskie when I think of tech, and that doesn't mean I think less highly of others. It just means he stands out to me, and he is somebody who's creating content today. If you go to his page, once you do, you'll see he shares out a lot of the events, a lot of the things he's doing. And Matt, I thank you for that. And I can't wait to follow the rest of your content journey and see exactly where this takes you and the team at CyberAdvisors. So thank you for being on the podcast with Magnetic.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, keep an eye out for some how-tos. I think that's where we're going to find our little niche in IT is putting some how-tos because we just need to show people how to do it. And like you said, if you need help, call us. We're here to help you.
Love it.